The Democrats are coming off a 2-week period where the president of the United States pretended he didn't know what the alt-right was and then said that there were very fine people at a torchlight rally with white supremacists. And they're somehow losing. Somehow they're losing. See, this is the amazing thing. You look at the polling data right now. What the polling data shows is in North Carolina, for example, a poll yesterday, Trump would still beat Hillary Clinton 43-39. And this was the case all throughout the election cycle. And there's been a lot of talk for the last 2 years about how the elections, the polls, they're all a referendum on Trump. The world revolves around Trump. Trump is our sun, and we all revolve around him in planetary orbit. The reality is that the last election cycle was not about Trump. The last election cycle was about Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump just showed how unpopular Hillary Clinton is. That's all that election cycle was. It wasn't about Trump being some genius god king. It wasn't about 40 chests upside down underwater, hungry, hungry hippos, MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. It wasn't about any of that stuff. It was about Hillary Clinton is the least appealing human being ever to walk the planet. Hillary Clinton makes the White Walkers on Game of Thrones look as though they are attractive date prospects. Okay, Hillary Clinton was a garbage candidate. She was such a bad candidate that this is real statistic, okay? Donald Trump won fewer votes in Wisconsin than Mitt Romney did in 2012, and he won the state. Hillary Clinton, no one likes her. Okay, so what that means, and you looked at the polls all during the election cycle, and what you saw was Trump was very consistent, always between 40 and 43%. The entire election until he got to 46 right at the end. Hillary Clinton was bouncing around between 50 and 39. 50 and 39. It's a really broad range. That's a really broad range. So what Democrats seem to neglect in all of their hatred of Trump is that they have to not suck. And they are failing at this very simple task of not sucking. And there are 4 ways that they are failing at this very simple task. So the first thing they do is they pick unpopular issues. So recall all the way back to last week when President Trump gave his ridiculous press conference after he had already given a press conference where he made a very good statement about why he doesn't like the KKK and neo-Nazis. Right? This is a 1-foot putt, okay, as it's happened. The next day he comes out and he says, well, what I said yesterday? No. And so he does that for no reason. And all his advisors are saying, dude, what? Like John Kelly is looking around and saying to himself, I can't believe this is my life now. Right? Everyone is wondering what he's doing. So the Democrats have a great talking point. They have a great talking point. I can cut the Democrat ad for them. Okay, the Democratic ad is Donald Trump saying, okay, it's a clip from the Charlottesville rally, the Friday night Charlottesville rally with all of the white supremacists and Richard Spencer and people chanting, Jews will not replace us. And then a clip of Donald Trump saying, very fine people were at that. And then a clip of Donald Trump with ex-congressional candidate shaking his hand. That's the ad. Right? The ad writes itself. It's the easiest thing in the world. So what do the Democrats do? They do the thing that they are the best at. They are unbelievably stupid. They decide that what is deeply important is to talk about Confederate statues. Right? This is what they're going to talk about, Confederate statues. So they move from an issue where 95% of the population agrees, neo-Nazis bad, and they move instead to an issue where 50% of the population thinks they're wrong. Okay, there's a Quinnipiac poll that came out yesterday. It showed 50% of Americans don't want to get rid of these Confederate memorials or don't care about it, and 39% say they want to get rid of them. So what do the media choose to do? What does the left choose to do? Let's talk about Confederate memorials. Do you understand how dumb this is? Just how cataclysmically stupid this is? Okay, it's incredible, and it's exactly what the alt-right wanted. Why do you think the alt-right rallied around a Robert E. Lee statue? You think they did it because they really care that deeply about a Robert E. Lee statue? The reason the alt-right and white supremacists rallied around the Robert E. Lee statue is because they were attempting to demonstrate to the public that there was a broad swath of people who agree with them. There aren't a broad swath of people who agree with them, but there are a lot of people who agree with them on the Confederate statue issue for different reasons. Not because they think that slavery was great, like some of the members of the white supremacist groups believe, but because they believe that this is part of American history. You don't wipe away American history just because it's uncomfortable. So what do the Democrats do? What does the left do? They decide that it is imperative that we have this out right now. They did the same thing after Dylan Storm Roof. Right? Dylan Storm Roof goes and he shoots up a black church and he kills, what was it, 19 people, something like that? I can't remember the exact number. He kills, I think it was 19 or 20 people. He kills an enormous number of people, murders them in cold blood. He's a white supremacist piece of human feces. So what do? Do we talk about why white supremacism is bad? No, we have a nationwide conversation about the Confederate flag, which literally millions of people do not hold in contempt and do not think connect with white supremacism. Because the left constantly is trying to broaden out their agenda. They can't just target the people we all agree suck. They have to instead try to lump in all of the people they don't like with all of the people that we all agree suck. Right? They have to make that into one giant group. So the first step in the Democratic failure is they pick unpopular issues. So here are 2 issues that are unpopular that they've picked. They've picked the Confederate flag issue, the Confederate statue issue. Even Chris Matthews, don't have to say, and Chris Matthews, the guy comes to the show, right? Even he recognizes that all of this stuff about the Confederate statues has no limiting principle, meaning that the same people who want to rip down the Confederate statues want to get rid of the Washington statues, as Trump said, and the Jefferson statues, and now they want to get rid of the Columbus statue in Columbus Circle in New York. The reason there's a statue to Christopher Columbus is because it was a great thing for the world that Western civilization discovered the Americas. It was. Okay, it wasn't a great thing for a lot of the people who were living there, but it was a great thing for world history that Western civilization ended up discovering the Americas, which were a primitive place filled with peoples who had no concept of modern civilization. It doesn't mean Christopher Columbus is a wonderful guy. Doesn't mean he didn't commit any sins. Doesn't mean he didn't enslave the natives. Okay, he did all of these terrible things, but that's not what we're celebrating when we celebrate Columbus Day. We're celebrating the fact that Western civilization is good, even though there are evil things that Western civilization has done. Okay, but the entire movement to rip down these statues, it's all about attempting to wipe away any history that people find gross because they can't just acknowledge Western. Here's the thing. Here's the big disagreement. There are a lot of people like me who say Western civilization is the greatest civilization in the history of the planet, bar none, by far, not close. And there are grains of evil embedded in it. And we have spent most of our history trying to wipe those away gradually. And then there are people on the other side who say Western civilization is bad, and racism and bigotry and slavery, these are inherent parts of the foundations of Western civilization, and that's why Western civilization is bad. So for people like me, I look at the Columbus statue or a Washington statue or a Jefferson statue or even a Lee statue, and I say, this was all part of our history, and it's important that we respect the history enough to discuss it, because this is all part of building a civilization. Even the nasty parts are part of building a civilization. This is what I think Katrina Pearson was trying to say, although she said it badly the other night. And the left says, all of these things are bad. Washington is bad because Western civilization is bad. It's racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. Right? Columbus is bad. But even Chris Matthews recognizes that this is a stupid move by Democrats, but they're engaging in it anyway. Here's Chris Matthews over there. Say, explaining why I shouldn't talk Confederate what's going on? I don't even know, but Kathleen, explain, go.
Nobody's going after Teddy Roosevelt. And the idea of going after slave owners, you'd have to basically take away our history, because the first 6 presidents or so had slaves. You'd have to go after people like Washington and, of course, all the Southern guys, all the ones who followed him, Madison and, of course, Monroe and the rest, and of course, old Hickory because of his Indian fighting and killing. Where do we stop? Where do we stop at saying we're going to recognize it for what it was and move on? And when are we going to say, no, some of it has to be decelebrated, taken away from our site?
Okay, one of the things that's fascinating here is there's a great divide between Chris Matthews Democrats and Al Sharpton Democrats. And it seems as though the Democratic Party is moving in the direction of Al Sharpton Democrats, not Chris Matthews Democrats. Matthews is much more like Joe Biden. He's a crazy old kook who talks about coming out of the show, but he actually has a concept of what people in middle America are thinking. People like Al Sharpton don't. And so they are ensconced in this. I had a discussion with Don Lemon last night on CNN, and I explained to him that just because the media, people like Don Lemon, see the Confederate statue issue as black and white, no racial connotations, just a black and white issue, evil versus non-evil, that doesn't mean that's how Americans see it. And moving in that direction is actually a large mistake. So that's one issue. Step one, again, for the Democrats is pick unpopular issues instead of popular ones. Here's another unpopular issue they've chosen to pick. There are hundreds of people, assuming these are all members of the left, not a lot of members of the right, who would do this, who are rallying outside NFL headquarters because of Colin Kaepernick, who is a garbage quarterback, okay? He had the worst quarterback rating of any quarterback in the league 2 years ago. He played like 5 games last year before he was benched in favor of basically some sort of poodle. I mean, he was such a bad quarterback that they basically took an inanimate object and stuck it behind center for the 49ers until he lost his job. So there's been this big rallying effect around Kaepernick, and Democrats are pushing this. and we all revolve around him in planetary orbit. The reality is that the last election cycle was not about Trump. The last election cycle was about Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump just showed how unpopular Hillary Clinton is. That's all that election cycle was. It wasn't about Trump being some genius God king. The Democrats are coming off a 2-week period where the president of the United States pretended he didn't know what the alt-right was and then said that there were very fine people at a torchlight rally with white supremacists. And they're somehow losing. Somehow they're losing. See, this is the amazing thing. You look at the polling data right now. What the polling data was a garbage candidate. She was such a bad candidate that this is real statistic, okay? Donald Trump won fewer votes in Wisconsin than Mitt Romney did in 2012, and he won the state. Hillary Clinton, no one likes her. Okay, so what that means, and you looked at the polls all during the election cycle, and what you saw was Trump was it wasn't about 40 chests upside down underwater, hungry, hungry hippos, MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. It wasn't about any of that stuff. It was about Hillary Clinton is the least appealing human being ever to walk the planet. Hillary Clinton makes the White Walkers on Game of Thrones look as though they are attractive date prospects. Okay, Hillary Clinton, it shows, is in North Carolina, for example, a poll yesterday, Trump would still beat Hillary Clinton 43-39. And this was the case all throughout the election cycle. And there's been a lot of talk for the last 2 years about how the elections, the polls, they're all a referendum on Trump. The world revolves around Trump. Trump is our son.